Hello and welcome to another game featuring cards from the new Dominion expansion, Dominion Plunder. Last video we talked about duration cards showing up in Dominion Plunder. Here is one of them, Frigate. It's a gold and it has a unique effect. Until the start of your next turn, each time another player plays an action card, they discard down to 4 cards in hand afterwards. Some people think this is an anti-engine card. It does show up a lot in our game here, so you'll see for yourself one way to use Frigate. There is something else in this kingdom, something new from Dominion Plunder. There's another duration card, Flagship, +2 coins. The next time you play a non-command action card, replay it. Functions like a throne room, but with some money on it. You'll notice here, with this duration card, the trigger is the next time you play a non-command action. Most of the time, or in Seaside in particular, duration cards would say now and at the start of your next turn. And all the triggers would happen now and at the start of your next turn. In Plunder, the duration cards have, some of them have different triggers. For instance, the first time when this goes into play, you get the coins. And for it to come out of play, you have to play an action card after it, a non-command action card. Then you replay it and then it can be discarded. If you do not play a non-command action card, Flagship will stay in play until one is played. It means it doesn't necessarily discard itself at the start of the turn, unlike something like Caravan or Fishing Village. That is interesting with duration. A little bit like tavern cards that end up on the tavern mat. And finally, we have one new thing, and this is my favorite feature of the expansion, traits. Traits modify certain action piles. So here we have the Fated trait. When shuffling, you may look through the cards, reveal Fated cards, and put them either on the top of the deck or the bottom of the deck. Now, in the kingdom here, if the walled villages are fated, I would love that. I could always top deck my villages. Now, over to the kingdom. We have, again, some new cards from allies. Underling with the Circle of Witches. We have the clashes, the rotating piles. It's a whole big mess, so to speak. What were my ideas going in? There is no plus buy in this kingdom critically. So you probably want to get to province as soon as possible and try to have a deck that can buy 4 provinces in a row. What will that look like? Maybe something with Destria, Hunting Lodge, something like that. You do have to think about the Frigate as well. You don't want to get all Destrias, and the Hunting Lodge actually is able to play around the Frigate very nicely. Recall Frigate, anytime another player plays an action card, you have to discard down to 4. So if you play your Destria, increase your hand size, Frigate will say, hey, check yourself, back down to 4. Every time you play a Destria, that'll happen. Hunting Lodge can get around that because your max hand size with Hunting Lodge is always 5. So you will have to discard 1, but it's not like Destria, you draw 2 and then have to discard 2, for example. Or, yeah, discard 2. Okay. So with that in mind, we're building something with Hunting Lodge. We need to thin. Steward will do it. Saltroza identifies that. They open with a steward. I have 5 and 2 though. Now what do you open on 5? Could be Frigate, but it doesn't really do anything. The attack doesn't hurt your opponent early. The money is nice, but maybe I don't need the money just yet. What I end up going for on 5 is a Hunting Lodge. We just spoke about Hunting Lodge and its ability to play around the Frigate attack. And on the 2, it's not really a 2 because there's Desperation in the kingdom, bottom right. I will desperately gain a steward because I also need to trash, and I do not want to fall behind on the trashing in this kingdom with no buy, no gain. There's some gain, but we'll get to that when it shows up. But for the most part, there's no gain. Alright, so we get the Hunting Lodge as we discussed. We have to see now what saltroza will get with their 4. Maybe they go for a Desperation Destria, for example. Instead, it's a battle plan, which makes sense. And I get my Desperation Steward here. Okay. Now, saltroza plays their battle plan. I was hoping to not see this because what I figure will happen is they will rotate it away from me and I lose complete control over that pile. I am entirely at saltroza's mercy on what cards to get from that pile. Now, if they pick up an Underling, Circle of Witches is there. You would like to land a few creases in your opponent's deck, I imagine. I could get an Underling here, but I feel the Archer is more important than the Underling right now. And saltroza sees their Steward to trash a couple cards. Our Steward bottom decked. What happens when you put a curse in your deck? It just increases the chances of that ever so slightly. We will discard, trash, pass it back. Alright, so saltroza is back with his Steward, trashes a couple more cards out from the deck, passes it back to me. My Archer comes down and I actually see quite a bit of money. I am going to pick up that Destria straight away. It'll help me find my Steward more quickly, and it's a bit of draw. So far no one's bought Frigate, but it wouldn't do anything right now. Desperation Walled Village for saltroza. A little bit surprised to see Desperation Walled Village. Perhaps I thought it would have been Underling. I get my first Underling there. I can't be taking all the curses. That's just nonsense. We get our first curse from the Circle of Witches there. And saltroza continues to trash. Purple and green out of the deck this time. We will not trigger the shuffle. Obviously, I knew the Steward and the Archer were coming up. So we draw right up to the end. Trash, attack. And with 4, we can also buy a Walled Village. I did think about Flagship a little bit here, but I need more villages before I get the Flagship in play. Notice Flagship is non-terminal. It's terminal, sorry. It's terminal. So you need to have actions banked up before you play the Flagship. Now, saltroza has not been rotating that clashes pile to not reveal the Warlords. I don't know what the reason for it is, but I'm happy. I would like to play without Warlord if possible. They go for Desperation again. They get up to 5, and they start on the Frigate. They start on the Frigate. So we'll see how this card affects this kingdom. Hunting Lodge, I don't discard. I choose to trash instead. Pass it back to saltroza. Frigate is gold, and that's very good in this kingdom. Remember, we spoke about getting to province consistently and quickly. Frigate will get you there, even if it's just a terminal gold. And here comes the Frigate. Now, I'm under the attack of the Frigate. They trash one more time. When I play this Destria, watch what happens. Discard 2. Unhappy. Unhappy noises. Attack again, and we get our first Frigate. We cannot leave our opponent Frigate free. Otherwise, they would gain all the Destrias and live a happy life. And we're not about making our opponents' lives happy in this game, right? Well, at least over the board. Now, if I see one Frigate from saltroza, I would expect them to go buy another Frigate here. They do trash with the Steward. No, they get coins rather, and they pick up an Archer. I land my first curse of the Circle of Witches, and here you'll see the fated mechanic. Remember, the frigates are fated. I'll have the option to top deck or bottom deck this frigate. So I didn't click the thing on the right hand side. You saw that little box. I was supposed to click that to decide whether or not I wanted it on top or below. I can't ask for an undo now, obviously, but somehow we ended up top decking the frigate anyway. Put it into play, we trash, and we could Desperation buy a frigate here. Could get another Underling without the curse. However, I think at this point I can put a Flagship into the deck. I think I can, but I choose to get the frigate instead to try to have the attack in play every single turn to keep my opponent under the scrutiny of the frigate. And we'll see how that plays out. They will do something similar to me, obviously. Then it won't just let that slide. Archer comes out. I keep the best card in my hand so they don't take it. Fairly straightforward decision. Interestingly, the Archer doesn't work well with the frigate. The Archer will drop my hand size so that when I play my Destria here, I won't have to discard 2. Just have to discard 1. There I click the proper icon and I am able to select where I want this frigate to be. Choose to top deck it to keep them in play. Keep a frigate in play every single turn. And I buy a second Hunting Lodge. At this point, I feel a little behind. I think I am behind in trashing. I've taken on more curses than saltroza as well. Somehow we're just hanging in there though. We're just hanging in there. We're behind, but not in a position where we lose the game. We still have frigates. We still have our steward to trash. We're just a little bit behind. We don't have control over clashes, which, okay, you would like to have it, but it's not critical. Take on another curse there. And they buy a second Hunting Lodge. Okay. Frigate attack is going to force us to discard here. Drop the steward. I don't know if that's right or not. I get the frigate in play after being able to top deck it because of the fated trait. Then the Hunting Lodge is going to come out, find me my steward. I trash a couple cards, get up to 4. Could be another desperation, but at this point, now that I have both frigates and I am putting them in play every single turn, I think now is a great opportunity for Flagship. Flagship, my intended target for the Flagship is going to be the Underling, so that I could potentially land curses more quickly into saltroza's deck. What I'm going to do now for most of the game here on out is bottom deck these frigates so that it is more likely I see one of my Hunting Lodges or a Destria in my opening hand. That is the idea with bottom decking the frigate here. So I select don't top deck. It doesn't, or did I select top deck? It took me a little while to figure out how to use that prompt. It wasn't entirely clear to me how to use it, but eventually I figure out how to get the frigate either on top or the bottom of the deck. Second steward for saltroza after trashing a couple curses. We are hanging in there just about, and both of our decks are close to being able to buy a province. Discard there, and the frigate makes me discard 1 more card. I do get my intended target for the Flagship, which allows me to land a curse into saltroza's deck. We go ahead, trash a curse from ours and a copper, get up to 6. Here, you don't want to buy gold because of that frigate attack. You want action so that you could put them in play potentially to stay below the frigate line of 4 cards in hand. That being said, I maybe should have bought another Hunting Lodge here. Instead, I went for a second Flagship, I believe. I did go for the second Flagship, and I think here is where I realized, yes, you have to click this thing, don't top deck, to be able to put the frigate at the bottom of the deck to increase my chances of top decking a Hunting Lodge. Hunting Lodge is the key card here. It'll keep your turns ticking over. All right. So we have a couple Flagships, a couple frigates, playing with the new cards, enjoying ourselves. The decks are comparable, honestly. They're comparable. Saltroza has an extra steward. I have a couple Flagships. Small differences. They have the battle plan, control over the clashes pile, and finally, Saltroza rotates to the Warlord. That indicates to me they want to buy Warlord. I'm not really sure why they want to do that, but okay, fine. At this point, I don't feel like I will lose the Warlord split. My deck is in reasonable shape and can get to 5 comfortably every single time, if that is their intention. They may just want to rotate it back around to the victory card below the Warlords. We'll see. Frigate comes down. Another trash from saltroza, and they do pick up the Warlord. So what will happen over the next 3 turns, 2 of my turns, 1 of theirs, is we will go ahead and empty the warlords. We will go ahead and empty the warlords while doing our best to land curses and trash the remaining coppers from the deck. Do have to discard 1 here. I don't need the flagship at this point, so I just drop it and trash the coppers from my deck. Deck is clean now, no starting cards are in it. Not so clean now, saltroza just put our curse back in. But I think I'll be able to land the final curse into their deck. So once I clean up that curse, I'll be completely clean. I could start using the steward for coins as well. The archer attacks don't hurt that much with decks this consistent and this strong. I say strong. Strong is relative to the kingdom. You know, no gain, of course. And I believe saltroza cleans up the last of their coppers here as well, picking up their second warlord. Now at this point, I am curious, genuinely curious to see. This time we top deck the frigate. No, we bottom deck it. Yeah, we bottom deck the frigate there. We'll get around to it. It doesn't matter where I put it. Land the last curse into saltroza's deck. I was saying I am interested now after I purchased the last warlord. What is saltroza's plan? I am second player. I haven't been in control in the sense I haven't been able to dictate the direction I want this game to go in for all of the turns so far. I lost control over the clashes. I was behind on trashing, a little bit behind on development, on first player. It really is up to saltroza to decide how they want to proceed from here. They had the idea with the warlords. I said, okay, we'll go after the warlords. I didn't need to go after the warlords because I don't have many copies of any action in my deck, but I don't want to give them all and potentially give them the opportunity to play, I don't know, like a third flagship or a third bishop or something. The reason I bring up bishop is, well, that is an opportunity to actually break symmetry here a little bit. It's not, the decks are not entirely symmetrical, but our capacity is. Both of us can get up to 8, and we can do it relatively consistently. So the question really is for saltroza, where do you go from here? What do you do? The decision they made is not province, or not province straight away, I should say. They opt for a territory here. The territory will come with a gold. This is the only card in the kingdom that gains territory. You would have to wait for a pile to be empty and for it to rotate around. But it does gain, and why I mention that is gaining is important for bishop. And at this point, I really had to think about whether or not I should buy a bishop in the next few turns or not. I am going to buy the territory here, of course. If I buy the bishop now, I don't have too many things to gain. Well, I could buy the territory next turn, but I am going to buy the territory here just to mirror exactly what saltroza is doing. I can't do much more than that with the cards present in the kingdom. I really just have to play second fiddle and see what they're doing. Look for an opportunity to gain some kind of advantage, but it is not clear to me that that will ever show up. At this point, I'm thinking we both walk away from this game with half a point. This was the longest game of the match as well. It took 59 minutes, let's say 1 hour to complete this. So that did weigh into my decision on whether or not to go after a bishop here. I decide here to go after the territory, and I do not pick up a bishop for the rest of this game. What saltroza ends up doing, I don't know if they missed the bishop or they didn't want the bishop, but what we end up doing here for the remainder of the game is trading victory points. They buy a territory, I buy a territory. Now we'll see what they buy. On this turn, they are going to buy a province. Then I'm going to buy a province. We do that until we get to the last 2 provinces. I'm saying this because now the gameplay is not interesting, and I've sped this part of the game up quite a bit. because the idea is already explained. We are exchanging green cards with each other at this point. No one's picking up our bishop. I don't know if it was right to pick up the bishop. I tried to calculate if I could do it, but I couldn't figure it out in the middle of the game. If it is possible, please let me know in the comments below. Saltroza gets their province, and I am going to respond in kind. At this point, it's just about managing your resources. You want to try to be as consistent as possible, and that means mostly keeping track of where your hunting lodges are. So here, this is a little mistake I made with the flagship. The flagship here would want to play the frigate twice, but I don't want to have that happen. And here's where I realized the little nuance with flagship. I want to play the flagship last because I don't want to have it out of the deck and have all this extra money just go into waste here. It's no point in doing that. Whereas if I keep the flagship out, you see it in play there for me in the middle of the screen. If I keep it out, what if I don't draw into my hunting lodge, but I draw my walled village instead? At least I could play the walled village 2 times because the flagship still has not found a non-command action card. So just a little bit of insurance. I do lose the silver from the deck, but I don't need the money to get to 8. I rather have the security. We did find the hunting lodge, and you'll see here I make a mistake. Here again, the flagship will want to play the warlord twice. I don't want that. I want to play the warlord just once. I don't want to draw a heap of cards. The frigate will make me discard most of it anyway. So I get the flagship on the hunting lodge instead. Now it will come out of play. And I've clearly sped up the video. 1 more province for me, 1 more province for saltroza, and we'll pause the video once we hit the 2 provinces because you'll see the decision saltroza makes here. You could probably already guess what they choose to do given that I told you the game was 1 hour long. I thought they would say, okay, let's share half a point, but saltroza feels they can do better than that. They feel they could get the whole point, so they start in on the duchies. I said, all right, I mean, I can't do anything. I already committed to not buying a bishop, so I'll just follow you on the duchies. The same thing we do for the provinces is the same exact thing we do for the duchies. We go down the duchy pile until there are only 2 left. Our decks are all the while getting worse from all the green cards we have stuck in it. That could lead to asymmetry. So maybe at some point saltroza will be tracking my deck, notice that I have a bad shuffle, or I gave myself a bad shuffle, take the penultimate province when I can't. So far none of that has happened. We both have gone after the duchies. Like for like. Now let's see what they do. What is the plan now? So do you want the tie now? It's still up there, still okay. No, you don't. They want gardens now. Said all right, I can do nothing but sit here and play their game, which is get more green cards. So we go for the gardens there. I only had money for gardens on that turn. 5 for saltroza is going to be a duchy this time. Maybe I could have pushed for duchy on the turn they gained gardens, but I don't need to do that. And I don't think it's helpful to do it either. I just need to be as good as them. Even if I'm 1 point ahead. I mean, they could have get this duchy after that, right? To cancel out my 1 point lead. Right, gardens will fatten up as the game goes on, but right now gardens are worth 2 and duchies are worth 3, is where the 1 point difference would come from. Okay, so they get the duchy, penultimate duchy. I have to get the last one just to keep parity. I do go ahead and not get the duchy here. Why? Because the territory is worth more points now. So I do take a 1 point lead. Yay, but that is going to get cancelled out quickly here. I also welcome the gold from the territory now in this deck that is becoming increasingly green. Saltroza takes the final territory. What's left? A duchy. Okay, I'll take the duchy. Now, the tie is still there if you want it. Everything has been level for a few turns now. They say no. They want the full point. We go for gardens. Half the gardens are gone. It really just seems to be petering out to a tame end here. Both of us just watching each other's decks to see maybe when we could strike with the penultimate province. I do have an opportunity here to get the penultimate province, but I decide against it. I think Saltroza has a Haunted Lodge coming up, and I don't want to play that game where I take the penultimate province and they get the last province to win. Because really, I don't have to do it, and if I get the gardens, that's just good enough, you know? That really is just good enough. It's again up to Saltroza to decide what they want to do. If they want to go after estates after this, I don't know. Just to introduce more variance into the decks. I said, okay, fine. You decide what you want to do. They do go for the estate. I don't know if it's because they only had money for an estate or if that was the plan. It does fatten up the territory, so I do need to get one. We trashed all of us in the beginning. So we take an estate, stay level with them. And I think we are coming up to critical turn here. I believe Saltroza does decide to call it quits on the estates and they go after the penultimate province. Is that right? Not quite yet. They get another estate, as do I. Is this the turn? Yeah, there's the penultimate province, but I did top deck my frigate in this case because I knew I had the flagship in play. I could play it twice. I could always threaten province. I was completely safe with that regard. So all things are equal, except all things are not equal. Let's go back. Find that screen again. All things are not equal because I had one more card in my deck. One more card in my deck than Saltroza. I ended up with 30 cards. They ended up with 29 cards somehow. Let me find that end screen quickly. Let's go back here. Just a moment. And all right, I can't get the end screen for you. But we end up winning that game because of the difference in the deck size. One card was the difference. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.